Welcome everyone. We have a very interesting class today on the soul, the causal body, the egoic lotus. It's quite the kind of class that you could call deep esoteric science. And the science of the centers, the chakras, the causal body in Atlantean times was called Laya Yoga. And this will be a new science that will be revived from ancient times in the Aquarian age that's coming. So we see this first diagram here, which is a small part of the planes of perception diagram blown up in more detail. This is called the egoic lotus, or the causal body of the soul. And you can see why this is called the esoteric sciences, because it truly requires a scientific approach by using the mind to discern and understand. That's one approach, of course. And when we reflect on these things, we intuitively flesh out what we've been applying ourselves to mentally. You can see that this lotus, this 12-petaled lotus, it resides on the second subplane of the higher mental plane we're looking at here. Okay. The planes of perception chart here, there is the lotus right there on the higher 3 subplanes of the mental plane, the lower 4 subplanes, of course, being the concrete mind, higher mind, lower mind, abstract mind, concrete mind. Abstract mind being the realm of creative activity, whether that's in the arts or sciences or any realm of human activity. So it draws upon the soul, which is located on that higher subplane, and in this case on the second subplane. But according to one's evolution in consciousness, it may reside on the third subplane, which relates to the mind, and the second subplane, which relates to love, or the first subplane, which relates to will, depending on your ray evolution and how much you've unfolded thus far. So you'll see that these petals are labeled LSK, which means love, sacrifice, and knowledge. The knowledge petals down here where my mouse is pointing, the love petals, the sacrifice petals of the heart lotus. And you can see various lines going here, there, and everywhere, actually. It can take some time, some years to even to get really into this diagram, because there are so many levels of understanding. But essentially, as a science, it spells out the nitty-gritty, or that which we don't see, in a more concrete way. And so the knowledge petals are the so-called outer tier of the egoic lotus. The love petals are the middle tier, the next tier, and the sacrifice petals are the middle tier, or the most middle, if you like. And the last 3 petals to unfold are right in the center. So, as I'll go on to explain throughout the class, the knowledge petals unfold first, and then the love petals, and then the sacrifice petals. Roughly speaking, again, depending on one's ray qualities and soul evolution. It can be uneven development or quite advanced development, but then in other lifetimes one has to go back and work on another petal, for instance. These circles down here are the various astral centers. We have the base of the spine with its 4 petals. We have the sacral center with its six petals. We have the solar plexus center with its 10 petals. And we have the spleen with its 6 petals. The spleen and the sacral center are the same. They're both associated with each other. And you can see various lines heading off in all different directions, but I'm not going to go into deep analysis of this today. just to give you a flavour, a taste. And of course, you can go and explore this in your own time. But we're going to talk a bit more about these petals as we go through. So a more colourful chart here. Someone did some colouring in. The plane of the ego, the abstract mind, is written down the side here. And the various petals in different colours. The threefold antakarana, the rainbow bridge between the monastic or mental permanent atom and another point down here which I can't see at the moment. Then we have the diagrams side by side. Just going to move this thing off my page here. Okay. Then you get a bigger bird's eye view of the structures on the left-hand diagram here, right down to the physical plane. The various triangles of relationships between the subplanes that move up to the astral plane, triangular formations there, and finally up to the mental plane and beyond, of course, right up to the highest plane of Adi. So we have the precipitation of consciousness or spirit into matter through all these different levels, filtering down to our souls, which of course impress our relatively integrated personalities and so forth. And really our return journey to source is about climbing back up this ladder again to the soul, the causal body, which we return to in every lifetime, with some exceptions, as I mentioned last week. Again, on the right-hand diagram, we can see these lines going off various directions. The egoic lotus is the heart chakra, and on the right here we have one fairly accurate diagram in terms of the Hindu tradition of the heart chakra, although you'll see different colours. The 12 petals of the heart chakra emulate the 12 petals that we're talking about here, and various Sanskrit motifs, and of course the 6-pointed star, the two triangles, the triangle of the personality pointing upwards and the triangle of the soul pointing downwards, the two united, creating that. It's a nice visualization to use when you're doing the beginning of our meditation and aligning soul and personality, to see those two triangles coming together as opposed to the two orbs of light that I suggest. So the egoic lotus is the heart chakra. It is composed of 3 tiers of petals that gradually unfold over many lifetimes. They more or less unfold in the sequence of knowledge, love, and sacrifice. Again, we use the 3 aspects: the third aspect of intelligence, second aspect of love, first aspect of will. And we build this causal body. We build qualities into this causal body in each incarnation. The causal body harvests the experience of any lifetime and adds it to the temple of light, if you like, which, funnily enough, or paradoxically enough, is at the highest initiation, the 4th initiation, is destroyed. So we build this causal body from lifetime to lifetime, and the soul, we build it because the soul extracts the sattvas, as they're called, S-A-T-T-V-A-S, from the life experience, from what we have wrought out within our personalities on the physical plane in terms of our life work, and so forth. So the building of the causal body is a result of a dual energy. One, the lower self has reflex action upon the higher self, as I was just more or less explaining. 2, the natural energy of self-impressing substance of the egoic lotus. Natural energy of self-impressing substance of the egoic lotus. Quite a profound thing to reflect upon there. The body-soul duality relates to the lunar Pitris, the builders of the form, and the fivefold Dhyani Buddhas. So we're getting a little bit esoteric here, but just to touch on that, I can't go into a full explanation. However, the five Dhyani Buddhas are depicted in some of the Buddhist tankas, the Tibetan Buddhist tankas, those wall hangings that you see, beautiful colours and artwork. They are in some sense the Kamaras. We've heard of Sanat Kamara and Shambhala and the various Kamaras around him, 7 altogether. But these 5 Dhyani Buddhas are not unlike the Kamaras. That's the short explanation anyway. So we return to this diagram again. The logos of a planet, like the planetary logos, consciously brings the two together. So the logos, like the planetary logos of the planet, consciously brings the two together, and one produces on the third subplane of the mental plane, that's from counting above down, a 9-fold vibration or wall, like a circular wall in the gaseous matter of that plane. So we have to use our imaginations here to really picture this kind of anchoring of mental substance in the gaseous matter of that subplane. 2, eventually produces a 9-petaled lotus folded over in bud shape upon a central point in the heart, as I'm circling here with my mouse. And 3, the central point is electric fire. It attracts substance to form through more petals, which are the bud that shields the central spark. So I realize this might be extremely abstract and maybe going over your head, but don't worry, it's just a matter of touching on this. That's why we've left this class to this point of the syllabus, so as to build the foundation of understanding before here. And don't worry, the classes are not going to get more abstract and more deeply esoteric after this. This is a fairly important brick to lay in the foundation thus far. Obviously, it's the soul. What is the soul? We've always probably had an abstract idea in our imagination of what the soul is. This is getting down to the nitty-gritty of what it's really composed of. So, don't worry if you don't understand or having difficulty in comprehending. So, here we see the 3 crosses that I've shown you before in other classes of incarnations. The mutable cross, the fixed cross, and the cardinal cross, which comprise the so-called 777 incarnations. This is symbolic. We have thousands of incarnations, okay? So, but 700 taken on the mutable cross, which is the cross of where we start in our whole soul evolution, developing the knowledge petals. At some point when we have really partaken of the husks of the far country, to quote the Bible, we awaken to the sense of soul and we mount the fixed cross. We take our first, second, and third initiations on the fixed cross, the cross of love. The mutable cross is the cross of knowledge. And so the love petals start to unfold on the fixed cross for Scorpio, Aquarius, Leo. Mutable cross, of course, Virgo, Pisces, Gemini, Sagittarius. Just to remind you too, that just because you have those signs prominent in your makeup does not mean to say that you're necessarily on that cross. Most people who are attracted to the esoteric teachings have jumped off the mutable cross and are on the path of the soul, and the conscious journey back home, pilgrim returning to the Father, so to speak. So, and then after the third initiation, the individual moves to the cardinal cross. So we have 770 and 70 incarnations respectively for these three crosses, symbolically, not actually. Because 777 is a very powerful number, of 7 being a number of creativity, of endless, infinite creativity, in fact. These three crosses correspond to the three main tiers of petals: knowledge, immutable cross; love, fixed cross; sacrifice, cardinal cross. So the causal body could be also described as 9 vibrations emanating from a central point. Its radiations produce those 3 major vibrations of great force, pursuing circular activity around the center. And these 9 vibrations, the 9 vibrations that pursue a diagonal path towards the periphery of the egoic sphere, because it's like egoic as in egg, kind of egg shape is often depicted as. So these 9 vibrations that pursue a diagonal path towards the periphery of the egoic sphere then swing around, forming a spheroid form of the causal body. And the torus symbol here is not exactly the same thing, but it approximates, I think, what is the Tibetans trying to describe in that previous paragraph. As 9 petals of a lotus radiating from a common center, hiding 3 petals. Remember, we're talking about how the causal body could be described as 9 vibrations. In the first section, in the second section, as 9 petals of a lotus radiating from a common center, hiding 3 central petals. Radiations from the petal tips cause the illusion of a spheroid shape. This is interesting. It's not unlike the emanations of the devas in the Deva Kingdom class we had that give us the illusion of them having wings, these vortices of energy that come up behind them. As 9 spokes of a wheel converging on a central 3-fold hub. So the lotus definition is used to picture the function of the ego and the causal body, there at the center of the lotus. You have this beautiful symbolism. And of course, the aroma, the perfume, the scent that emanates when a lotus unfolds. And we have the perfume of the soul. And particularly so at the 4th initiation, which DK describes in a few places in the blue books, cosmic fire mainly, I think. So we're talking about fires. In fact, when we look at the planes of perception that all the 7 planes and there's 7 subplanes, they're all different gradations of fire. Various frequencies of fire is a way to think of them as. So we have electric fire, solar fire, and fire by friction. And again, we have our triplicities, correspondences, which are so much the basic foundation of esotericism. Electric fire corresponding to spirit, the jewel in the lotus, as in right in the center, the monad, or the spirit, the essential essence of ourselves. Solar fire, or consciousness, the 9 petals, or the sum total of the 9 petals unfolded, soul. Fire by friction, substance, the 3 permanent atoms, the personality. Fire by friction is basically electricity that we plug into in our power points in our homes. That's fire by friction. That's one expression of fire by friction anyway. It's tangible, yet we still don't understand it either. Quite a magical thing to consider. Something we take for granted, but we don't really understand how electricity works. So these 3 fires are one in manifestation with the egoic or auric egg. Of course, the egoic means soul with a capital E, and egoic with a small e is the lesser ego of the personality that we use commonly in everyday parlance. So the evolution of the spirit involves the lunar Petries, or members of the Deva kingdom, who prepare the lower sheaths of the personality. Fire by friction nourishes and warms, and a lower vibration controls at this level. The lunar devas or Petries build the form, the solar Petries build the causal body. The solar Petries develop egoic consciousness. The thinker occupies the sheaths, bent to his or her will, and eventually discards them. Solar fire irradiates the lower sheaths, eventually increases in heat and destroys forms. It's funny, when you hear about someone who has an internet program or is excelling in any particular field of inquiry or expression, they're termed as being on fire. And this is a really good indication that their soul force is working through them. That woman is on fire. That man is on fire. They're really peaking at their alignment between personality and the soul is really working powerfully through them. In the chat, we have a comment here. Hugh says 9 petals plus the 3 of the bud equals 12, the number in the heart chakra. So is the soul centered in the heart? Yes, it has a very close association. But of course, we know the consciousness thread is anchored in the head. The life thread is anchored in the heart. So we have to discern between the two. But I think, there's an antakarana between head and heart that's like a reciprocal kind of loop. Best way I can describe that. Electric fire, number 3 here, is revealed. So intense it puts out other fires of personality, and the soul withdraws itself with the gain of material existence and develop love wisdom. In other words, the electric fire corresponds to the monad or spirit. The evolution of the egoic lotus, its formation, its vitalizing, its nurturing and unfolding. 1, the outer knowledge triad, the lords of active wisdom. So we're talking about these builders, these devic builders that we are unaware of, but have a parallel evolution to our own, and a cooperative evolution that humans will become far more conscious about in this coming age of Aquarius and beyond into the 6th root race. They're invisible to most of the population except for the clairvoyants and highly evolved beings. So these beings are building the lunar Petries, the solar Petries. They're constantly at work building and adding as we create a thought, as we explored in the thought form class. We send out a signal, a frequency, and the builders automatically respond to building that thought, that idea in mental substance into a geometrical thought form. Juliana says, is it the sensibility of the heart and the consciousness of the head that together are the soul? You could say that, but not necessarily. Sorry if I'm sounding vague there. So the outer knowledge triad, the lords of active wisdom, the summation of experience and developed consciousness, the mutable cross, as I was saying before. The middle love triad, the lords of active love, the application of knowledge and love in service corresponds to the fixed cross. Love in service, note that phrase. Application of knowledge, love in service, fixed cross. The inner sacrificial triad, or the sacrifice petals, the lords of active will, full expression of knowledge and love, in conscious sacrifice to all to further the plans of the planetary logos. This is really using occultism in a very conscious way to cooperate with the greater plan of the planetary logos. Now, there was something else. Oh yeah, okay, we're getting to it. The various petals. I'm just going to go back here for a moment. No, it's not there. I'm going to describe it now then. So each group of petals are under the definite guidance of Agni Svatas, as I was saying, Diva groups, that oversee all of humanity's unfoldment of petals, individually and as groups. It's an amazing thing to consider. That requires a lot of maintenance and billions of these beings that are at work doing this. It's quite an extraordinary thing to consider. They are the threefold ego. When considering humanity, the energy of three groups of Buddhas around Sanakamara, as I was mentioning before, flows through the petals of activity, love, and sacrifice. So in the knowledge triad, we have three petals. This is the first tier of petals, but they are divided into combinations of knowledge, love, and knowledge, sacrifice. And they have different colors associated with them. So the knowledge, which is a really basic human being, kick-starting consciousness evolution, is knowledge on the physical plane and relates to orange, which of course is the color of the fifth ray of knowledge, green, which is the color of the third ray of active intelligence, and violet, which is the color of the seventh ray of ceremonial order or magic. The second petal, knowledge, love on the physical plane, orange, rose, which is the color of the sixth ray, and blue, which is the color of the sixth ray and the second ray of love, wisdom. The sixth ray of devotion and idealism. So notice orange is all the way through. And knowledge, sacrifice on the physical plane. So in various lifetimes, at this really basic stage of evolution, people learn about the higher tiers of petals that are reflected downwards onto the basic knowledge triad. So these petals are vitalized in the hall of ignorance and open as the second circle is being organized. Okay? So there's this constant activity going on unbeknownst to us. Well, we may feel things and sense things, but we don't see these processes. And with regard to the hall of ignorance, it corresponds to the mutable cross stage, the hall of ignorance, and to a degree the hall of knowledge. And the hall of knowledge and wisdom is really to do with the mutable cross. These are places that we go in our hours of sleep, as I mentioned before in the dream class, for learning on the higher planes. So there's your knowledge triad. Next up, we have the love triad. Petal 1, love knowledge, high knowledge applied through love on the physical astral. So we have rose or predominant all the way through here, rose orange, the pink or red, more pink than red, I think, with rose being the color of the sixth ray of devotion. Because at the immutable cross expression, devotion as a pathway to love is one of the main things being developed. So rose orange, which is a combination of devotion and mind. Green violet, rose blue, yellow indigo. Yellow being the color of the fourth ray. We'll just go through each one. Petal 2, love, higher intelligent love on the physical astral plane. So rose, the color of the rose is twice on this plane, and blue, all the 2, 4, 6 line except for orange. And petal 3, love, sacrifice, loving intelligent sacrifice on the physical astral, rose orange, yellow and indigo, yellow being the colour of the fourth ray, indigo being the colour of the second ray of love wisdom. The love petals preserve orange but add rose in every petal, 4 colours. These petals are vitalised and organised in the hall of learning and remain, that's what I meant to say before actually, the hall of learning. I'm not sure that I said that or not. And remain unopened. The outer tier, sacrifice, simultaneously unfolds, revealing the second tier. So again, don't worry if you don't understand. I certainly don't. So just giving you a flavour of what you can choose to study more deeply if you want to follow this up. So the sacrifice triad, same thing. I'm not going to go through them all. Sacrifice knowledge, the will to sacrifice through knowledge on the mental plane, thus intelligently dominate the lower threefold man or woman. Petal 2, sacrifice love, the will to sacrifice on the mental plane and thus serve. And petal 3, sacrifice, the utter sacrifice of all forever. I love that phrase. It's one that we've joked about in esoteric circles over the years. Are you willing to enter the fire of utter sacrifice of all forever? So again, we come back to our 3 tiers of petals: knowledge, love, and sacrifice, and the middle bud that is unfolded last, that holds the jewel within the heart of the lotus. Here are the 5 Dhyani Buddhas I was referring to before. The blue one down here is the medicine Buddha, but there are exoteric interpretations and more esoteric interpretations. In the mystery of these subsidiary colours and of the gradual shining forth within the lotus of 5 colours, in any petal at one time is veiled the mystery of the 5 Kumaras. So that's from Cosmic Fire, that quote. These petals are vitalized in the hall of wisdom. Simultaneously, the middle circle unfolds. The inner remains to be unclosed until the path of initiation. The petals unfold according to the monads of power, love, and activity. So the spirits that are on the first, second, and third rays. The majority are the love monads. The love petals unfold easier. We are predominantly love, wisdom, souls, and monads on this planet, in this second solar system, the solar system where we are learning to love, essentially. The sacrifice petals are the hardest for all to unfold, a love and knowledge that goes out to that which must be saved through sacrifice. And so we can think of the many sacrifices that we make at all levels of human evolution, from the basic parent who sacrifices for their children, who may not be developed mentally or emotionally, but has those basic instincts of being able to sacrifice, which of course develops into a much higher sacrifice, such as the sacrifice of Christ on the cross. These 3 circles of petals are the mystery of the 777 incarnations, figurative and symbolical. The 700 incarnations is the longest period, the outer circle, knowledge petals. Advanced humanity from the moon chain, and certain planets of the inner round came, or monads from certain planets of the so-called inner round came in later sub-races of Atlantis. They had refused to incarnate earlier because the bodies were too coarse. This was going back to Lemuria. This is a great mystery that I describe in my video, The Hidden History of Humanity, and also in my book, Unveiling Genesis. We hear about it in the Bible and other religious texts, and the so-called fall. This is a reflection of the fall, and no sin was committed. It reflects upon earth with class distinctions, caste systems, labour and capital, those in the halls of ignorance and of learning. I go into some of the cycles here, the separative of centuries. I'm not going to go into this too much for now, but obviously the science of cycles is quite an arcane branch of esotericism. And when you have cycles of 10, it concerns the numeral 1, the first ray, and likewise with the other numerals of the other rays, 2, 200, 2000, 3, etc. But there are many, many other sub-cycles and variants in between that I won't go into now. But over many lifetimes, we incarnate, according to our soul ray, we incarnate on certain ray cycles, and with groups of other souls on the same ray, who we have karma with quite often, and we go in and out of the incarnation according to these rays. So, for instance, at the moment, we are told that there are not many fourth ray souls in incarnation. I think we might have got a taste of the new fourth ray souls coming back into incarnation in the 60s and 70s, but they're supposed to be coming in with the new fourth ray cycle starting in 2025. They will last incarnate in Europe through places, through the fourth ray soul of Germany and the great musicians that incarnated at that time, as I've probably said in other classes. So we follow these cycles. The 70 incarnations is the middle circle, the occult significance of initiates sending out followers in groups of 70, going 2 by 2. Jesus in the Bible makes a few comments similar to this. The development in the 70 incarnations, the middle circle or the fixed cross, of course, there is the development of love in personal life, the evolution of the astral nature based on recognition of the pairs of opposites and equilibrizing those into love and service. The Hall of Learning corresponds to this as well, corresponds to the war in Atlantis actually. We recapitulate by our individual war or Kurukshetra that leads us to the probationary path. 7 incarnations corresponding to the cardinal cross, the last cross, passed upon the probationary path as mental body comes alive. All previous evolution is relatively unconscious. 2 outer rings of petals are stimulated. The 2 will petals are coordinated. 1 unfolds. And this is a momentous stage for the probationer. This is somewhat of a bit of a conundrum here, because really, I said before, you take the higher initiations on the cardinal cross, and here he's talking about the probationary path, which is on the fixed cross. So I'm not going to bother to try and untangle that for now, but just to give you some of these statements as stimulating ideas. The inner petals opened by the 3rd initiation. The full-blown lotus is seen in full beauty. At the end of 777 incarnations, the disciple passes through the door of initiation and 1 enters upon a brief synthesizing process and garners experience of the first 2 halls, transmutes knowledge into wisdom, transforms the shadow of things seen into the energy of that which is, achieves final liberation from all lower forms, in other words, the 4th degree initiation. And 2, this period of initiation is divided into 7 stages, 5 of which concern the evolution of the ego, and then we come back to the 5 Kamaras again. I'm not going to even bother going there for that. These notes have been taken from Cosmic Fire and some of the blue books, just again as to give the aroma, to give the taste of the subject. So the 4th initiation is also called other names, the Great Liberation. It's the stage of evolution that I mentioned in another class that Yogananda, for instance, reached, or Ramana Maharshi, where the inner bud is bursts open, essentially, through the electrical force of the rod of initiation. Each time we take a minor or a major initiation on the inner planes, we have a rod of power applied to us that amps us up literally with electricity to a higher frequency. And when that happens, it may take even a lifetime or two to ground that and to integrate that. But it's certainly, it's a recognition of the next stage of unfoldment that you've reached. It's a definite move forward. So the inner jewel is revealed, and it brings about destruction. One of the permanent atoms become radioactive. The electronic lives in their various groups escape, return to the eternal reservoir of substance. So we're talking continually in terms of electricity and frequency. This is truly the Aquarian way of looking at things in terms of the future Aquarian age and all the Aquarian esoteric sciences which are going to come forth to complement the exoteric sciences with which we're mainly familiar at the moment. 2, very high quality substance which will provide vehicles for other lives and other cycles. And this comes back to what I was saying before about the soul which harvests the sattvas, the refined qualities that we develop in any one life or another. It stores them like chestnuts and for the soul to draw upon within the causal body when it incarnates takes the next incarnation. So the frequencies are moving up with each incarnation. 3, the petals are destroyed by action of fire. The multiplicity of Deva lives that form them are gathered back by the solar pitris into the heart of the sun and will be recycled in another solar system. So the law of economy is working constantly, unbeknownst to us in many ways. And 4, the central electric life returns to its source, escaping from its prison, functioning as energy center on planes of cosmic etheric energy. Hence, the 4th degree initiation is the true liberation from earth life. And after that, the 5th initiation is taken, which is when one becomes a master of wisdom. But at the 4th initiation, one can also become a lord of compassion and can choose to actually go into other evolutions, which I may have touched upon before. Juliana says, when do you become aware of the stage of initiation you are at? Well, that can be only an intuitive thing for most people, I think. If you're consciously trying to study occultism, as I'm fond of saying, we're all mystics learning to become occultists, then with that knowledge that we glean, we can start to get an idea, and reflecting upon that, we can start to get an idea of where we might be at. But it's a very glamoured area, as I've said before, because many of us, it's a natural proclivity for humanity to, in its pride of having stolen fire from the gods, so to speak, to think that we're way ahead of where we are. There was one of the Tibetan groups that he had last century who had not taken the first initiation, and after reading some of the blue books, thought he was in line for the 4th degree many, many lifetimes down the track. So wherever you think you're at, I always say to people, -1 or 2 initiations. It's always, it's to bring in a level of humility into your self-assessment. For instance, a lot of people in this work think that they've passed the 2nd degree initiation, where the complete control of the astral body is demonstrated. And and many have not, I believe. And so I think it's a healthy thing to say, to put yourself as somewhere between the first and second degree. Even though you might be interested in esoteric topics, you may not have taken the first degree yet, or you might be just going through it, like this gentleman that I was just describing, who in fact was the Tibetan was working with, because he was offering financial support to Alice Bailey, but also because of his karmic links to the Tibetan and the others. So you see, an ashram is composed of people at all different levels who are converging towards the center through the various magnetic ring pass knots within the ashram, at the center of which is the master. And as we proceed through the initiations and minor initiations, we become more cognizant of the planetary plan, and learn how to evaluate ourselves in terms of where we place ourselves on the path, or place ourselves in service, I should say. So you might be thinking, yes, I've taken the first, anywhere between a number of 20 or 30 incarnations between the first and second degree. Of course, with occult knowledge, we can hasten that journey, but it requires an incredible amount of mental discipline to do that. Once the second degree is taken, however, the other higher initiations usually come quite quickly, within one life or a few lives in some cases. So hopefully that's addressed some of your question there. Juliana says, surely I have passed a major initiation. I was thinking that maybe at a certain point of the evolution one might have the vision of where one is at. Yes. You know, the first initiation can pass relatively unnoticed, where the first really taste of soul or Christ consciousness enters into the physical etheric vehicles, and the person adopts a new lifestyle and so forth. The second and third degree initiations, they are major life events. You can't miss those. And they are described by, can someone just mute their microphone there, please? They're described by various people in books, various disciples and authors that you can find in many books. Their experiences definitely. I think there's a guy called Andrew Cohen, some of you may be familiar with, a kind of a new agey kind of writer. I think his experience in one of his books is definitely the second initiation he went through. It's a very high point of unfoldment, because the control of the astral vehicle, which is relating to Atlantean consciousness, takes a very long time to effect, to really understand what desire is and to control desire. And even, in a sense, third degree initiates and beyond are tested time and time again with second degree type of testing. Apparently it's quite a sight to behold, the bursting forth, the destruction of the causal body at the fourth initiation. It's like a very long journey of the rose or flower that finally opens and sheds its aroma and its beauty for days or weeks, and then there's no more. And that is the metaphor, the analogy for the soul's journey, that is released. All the atoms of consciousness, both lunar and solar, are released back and recycled into the solar system or the earth sphere. And the individual has a direct connection with the monad or the spirit, and is able to work through the personality. So again, these Indian saints that I mentioned before, like Yogananda, so forth, they were working from the monad. Krishnamurti was working from the monad somewhat imperfectly in in that he was addressing others, as if they were the monad, and created some misunderstandings. But yeah. And so the last picture here is the parinirvana of the Buddha, and all the kings and saints from the four directions, as it's called, who come to pay their respects. The reclining Buddha, who of course is now, I think, around about the 7th degree initiation, just about to leave the earth altogether, leaving his karmic responsibilities behind. And in 1965, we are told that the Christ, the one who holds the office of the Christ, took over the vestments of the Buddha, like his garment, the sattvas of his life experience over many, many lifetimes, in a way that merges their two paths that they'd been cooperating upon since the ancient days of Atlantis, since they both took the 3rd initiation in an ashram in Atlantis millions of years ago. I'm diverging here a bit, I know, but I'm just tuning into this because we are at a point now, as we go into the 6th root race, even in the Aquarian age, where the Buddha will not come back again. He will not come back to visit us every Wesak festival, every May full moon, as he does at the moment. He descends as far as the mental plane. His job is almost finished. The Christ will take over. And what this corresponds to as well is the synthesis and unification of the so-called moon chain souls and earth chain souls, which we'll explore more in another class. The Christ is an example or exemplar of the earth chain evolution that started back in Lemurian times. And the Buddha is an exemplar of the moon chain. He was poised to take the 3rd initiation on the moon chain, but didn't take it because of the failure of the moon chain. And all those souls were transferred to the earth chain in the early subraces of Atlantis in this particular time. I'm not sure whether you're following all this, but so ever since then, the Christ and the Buddha have presided over those two evolutionary streams, and blended them in a way that soon the Buddha will not have to hang around any longer. He can go off on his cosmic journey to one of the so-called 7 cosmic paths, which is mentioned in A Treatise in Cosmic Fire. I'm not sure which one he's chosen. But out of his compassion, he actually chose another path earlier, but realized eventually that it was a mistake. So there's some very interesting things that kind of discrepancies, if you like, to the law that we read about in the blue books. The first path, by the way, is the path of earth service, which is what I have used a logo for. I created a logo for that for my books when they were called Apollo Publishing, the first path, Earth Service.